we do research over here to try and get the next generation recording heads and try to put those into drives. So basically develop product technology over at the design center in Chafee. And here is the design Bloomington, which is the recording heads group. So, this is quite a big place. More than 1,500 people work at Bloomington, and almost 700 people work at Chafee. So that's, so far as the U.S. is concerned, it is a big concern. And here we deal with hard disk drives, solid state drives, and other technologies, drive security, etc. So a whole IoT, you may have heard of Internet of Things, all this stuff. We do a lot of brainstorming over here. So that's where my office is. So, and here is a short outline of the whole talk. Start off with the industry snapshot of where we stand today. Some of it you might know, so I again apologize in advance. Some of the slides are a little bit dated because of legal issues. I can't put in a whole bunch of new things, but so please bear with me. Then a little bit of HDD background, hard disk drive background, and something about HAMR, which is heat assisted magnetic recording. Then Stephanie will talk about modeling, HAMR modeling, and the future of HAMR before she wraps up. Okay, so the first three is what I will cover. So quick industry snapshot. So this is what I was saying, that is slightly dated. This is what the digital universe was in 2020. And sure enough, we did hit 44 zettabytes of digital information or more. So I would say that last year, we generated 1.7 megabytes of information per second. So where does all this information get stored? And that's where your hard disk drive, your cloud storage, everything comes in, and everything finally ends up in magnetic storage. So here's a whole bunch of where we stand with the information that we have generated, right from byte to zettabyte. So this kind of scaling is quite a lot, and it's you must have read all about this. But I want to tell you, it is very exciting to work right at the forefront to figure out how we could cram all this information with a good fidelity these days. So it is becoming more and more and more difficult, I have to tell you. All the storage, as you know, has shifted to cloud. And every year, it's the demand is increasing at a rate of 35%. That's the CAGR. So it's very fast. And now I think with the COVID coming in, it's really a whole bunch of has exploded. The information has exploded. So what we have to do is figure out where and how to store this stuff. Here again, just want to say the impact of flash, everything, whatever gets stored, even though you have your flash on your cell phone and all that stuff, all that is fine, but where does it finally get stored so that even, several years from now, you still go and you can dig up. Was there a question? Okay. So several years from now, we have information that you can dig up, which means to say that all the stuff that you store in your cell phone, through your cell phone to different social media, you can still access it after years, and that's because it is stored on hard disk drive. So that's where your HDD comes in, hard disk drive comes in. So this is the child's slide, I call this, but it's really very simplified way of looking at it. I'm sure all of you all have seen this in your school times, but just bear with me. How data is stored is saved on a hard disk drive. Seagate did come up with the first hard disk drive, and this idea of putting information on a piece of media which goes round and round, and you put that arose from Seagate. So I'm very honored to be a part of the team which came up with this kind of idea. Anyway, so 4KB is the catchphrase. Every image is broken up into this kind of chunks of 4KB of chunks of binary data, and then you have the operating systems, which keeps track of where you put your data in and your free space, and and put your LBAs, your logical block addresses, to all these little chunks of data and everything. And all the bookkeeping is done. Each hard disk drive adds extra bits of. Okay, there's an echo. Is there an echo coming in? All right. So Saurabh Rathore, if you can just mute yourself because there's an echo coming in through your speaker. Okay. Thank you. So, so where was I? The hard disk drives. So what you do is you have all your information, and then you have address where the information is stored, and all the coding is done, and the hard disk converts the LBA to a physical location on this media. So what we do in our group is really look at this head over here and the information on the media. So the head does the job of writing and reading your information on this media, which is magnetic material. So the first hard disk drive, this was way back, IBM introduced RAMAC, which is the first computer built in hard disk drive. And all these folks came off, and it all became Seagate, and it's all one big happy family. But essentially, I just want to take you back to 70 years ago, where when the hard disk, the storage capacity was 5 megabytes, and the weight was more than 1 ton. The size was 16 square feet. And I want to tell you, essentially, this process hasn't changed of putting information on something that, a flat disk that goes around and round instead of a tape. If anybody remembers the olden time, you used to have these cassette tape like that. So information was on that tape. Even now, we do have some information put on tape, archival information, but hard disk drive is the way to go, and this process has not really changed. So I want to show you the inside of today's hard disk drive. You have the media, the disk, very smooth. The average roughness is 5 angstroms. Trying to bring it down, and then you have the head here and the gimbal. The head gimbal assembly over here. The air gap between the top disk and the bottom of the head, top of the disk and the bottom of the head, is 2 nanometers. You can imagine the kind of technology that goes into your reading and writing your data. It's much more complicated than rocket science, I say. So you have the magnetic actuator, which positions the head across the disk. And we can do it really with great precision. Now, you know that if you're standing at outside edge of the disk, the angular velocity is higher here, which means to say the disk is moving faster. But anyway, the disk moves at 78 miles per hour. So all these are, you know all this stuff. But one thing I know you may know about, but it's really fun, is that very recently we started shipping our drives with helium in it. So the idea is it uses less power, and it causes less drag when you're moving the head so fast over the disk. Okay. Now these distances, like nanometers and 5 angstrom roughness, this is all cutting edge technologies. It's I'll talk about scale in a minute, but it's it's cutting edge technology. It's a lot of fun being with this. So let's go a little bit deeper into what a hard disk drive, or all the different parts. Okay, so you have the heads, which supply the excitation, and that means we write the information and read it back. So we write the information, we have the sensors to recover the information that is written on the media. Okay. Now, head is contained in something called a slider because it slides over the media. Okay. You will have the writer element, the reader element, and a heater, so that when you heat, the heater is there just so that you can control the distance between the media and the head. Okay. So all this, the head itself is very, very tiny, and I will show you a little bit later all the intricacies of the head. What about the disk? The disk contains the medium. It's the magnetic medium, which has where you can store, or you can encode information and store it. Now there may be up to 9 disks in a head disk drive, in a hard disk drive. So the idea is that you would have all these stacks of media, one on top of the other, but they're very, very precisely separated, so that they can have this head going in through. So you would have the head gimbal assembly where you can have so many heads, and you would have the whole thing, just you can move each one separately over the disk. Okay. So the HSA, or the head stack assembly, rotates around a pivot center, and then it goes to different locations to store your data. So how does it store data? Where does physics come in? And where does this nanotechnology come in, right? So this is where it comes in. Recording media is made up of very small magnetic grains. Information is stored by magnetizing these grains in different directions. So if you have 2 directions, you have 1 and 0. We all know that, right? So there's some element in the head which writes the information, records it along some tracks on the disk. So this would be radially around you would have this written on the track. Okay. Is there a question? Okay. So the data is encoded by the presence or absence of a transition. So you have up and down, and if the moment you have a transition, that is going to give you your presence or absence of a transition is going to give you your data. Is there a question? Okay. What you would be surprised is that you would have lots of grains, and we would just magnetize this up and down and randomly, and then you would get a picture of your cat, like I showed you, or of your heart or brain or lungs or whatever, what have you, right? So that is the important and most exciting part of it. All the work of detecting the transitions and connecting it from this 0 and 1 into user data or pictures or whatever is done by the channel. So those are the different parts of a hard disk drive. You have the head, the media, and all the electronics that controls the heads and the media, and the heater and the channel. So let's talk about scale of things. I just want to give you an idea of really this does fit in a nanotechnology part. Okay. Debashish Talukdar, please, can you mute yourself? I really am hearing a lot of echo and it's very distracting. I apologize for calling a... Is there a question? Okay. So to get an idea about, get a feel for a nanometer, I mean, we all know that the human hair is 50 microns, right? Here is a disk. This is where your data is stored, okay? And you have a head slider and an ant are placed on a 95 millimeter recording media. Okay. And you can see how big the ant is and how big the recording head is. You can see how, or rather I should say how small a recording head is. Okay. Now you're going down 20 microns, and that's where, you know, you're going deep into this part. You would go, you enlarge it. That's your ant's eyes, and you are looking at here 20 microns on the head, recording head. This is 2 microns, and here is more details about this head. Okay. What I'm going to tell you is going to blow your mind. What you're going to write with, that magnet just sits right here, which is almost like the hair on the ant. I mean, this over here on the ant. Okay. That is how good and precise the technology has been to produce a hard disk drive so that we can also store our songs and photos, right? So essentially, some numbers, magnetic media grain is 7 nanometers today. They're trying to make it smaller, difficult. We're fighting nature here, guys. A data bit is 50 nanometer wide. That's when it was 1 terabits per square inch at that time. Now our record is 2 terabits per square inch. So you can imagine what your bit size is. Shortest wavelength of visible light is 400 nanometers. Okay. So now another way of looking at this is a water molecule is about almost 3 angstroms across. And we can see later that only 4 can fit between the head and the disk during the read-write operation. So this is how precise we have to be, because the information that we are looking at is very, very precious, right? Here's another way of looking at it. Here's your magnetic pole. Here's your media. here is something called NFT, and I'll talk about this in a bit, Thomas. And this is a strand of DNA. DNA is 2 nanometers wide. It will not fit in the air gap between the head and the disk. That's how close we are flying, and that's how well precise our mechanisms are. This is it's a comparative of the red blood cell and the magnetic recording pole to scale. Okay. So now I've been talking, I just told you about this NFT, right? At some point, I will tell you what is an NFT. But before that, I want to talk to you about some recording. So longitudinal, perpendicular recording, etc. So as you know,
how to see DNA, ma'am?
Sorry?
How to detect DNA, ma'am? DNA.
How to detect a DNA? We don't do that. I'm just showing a DNA strand to give you an idea of the scales at which we operate. Okay. There are a lot of technologies where you can extract the DNA out of your hair or blood or whatever, but that doesn't come yet in the storage that we're talking, information storage that we're talking about. No, it doesn't answer your question, but that's beyond my expertise. How to detect DNA is beyond my expertise. I'm not a biologist. So, yeah, but you all know how small a DNA is. That's why I brought this up. Thank you for the question. Was there another question?
No, ma'am. Fine, ma'am. I can move.
Okay, thank you. So this is the media, and we write with it, and then you can read back, right? So before we went ahead, we were talking about the 2 different directions where you see 0 and 1, right? Actually, lot of people are talking. So if there are questions, please ask. Otherwise, I would really appreciate if you go on mute because it's very distracting for me. Please have pity on me. It's 12 o'clock here. So all this distraction is just going to my head. Thank you. So you have 2 different directions. So you have to define, right? Ones and zeros. So you can either be 1 like this, 0 like this, or you can be 1 this way and 0 the other way. Okay? So if you are going in the line of the media, that's called longitudinal. So there's only so much you can bring 2 magnets near to each other, right? We are dealing with magnets over here, small magnets, very, very small. But essentially, what you're doing is you want to pack more information. So as you want to pack more information, there's only so much you can bring longitudinal recording. You are literally hitting the limits here. So as we increase the areal density, we shrink the grains.
Fire by fire.
Mr. Srinivasa Rao, please, can you mute? Actually, if the host can mute people, that would be very, very helpful. See, we are shrinking the grains. Debashish, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. call this mute, unmute. But because we go longitudinal, there's only so much you can pack. What we decided to do was we go perpendicular. So we are talking about magnetic material which likes to line itself perpendicular to the plane. Okay? So that means it's got an anisotropy. Well, it's described by the symbol Ku. It likes to line up perpendicular. So it has a uniaxial anisotropy, Ku. And
I'm sorry for interrupting. Hello?
Yeah?
Ma'am, can you define what is H right and Ku?
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks,
I'm
ma'am.
coming to that. Yeah. So what Ku is the uniaxial anisotropy constant, which defines how your magnetic moments want to line. Does it want to line up and down, or does it want to line sideways? Okay? Whatever it is, it needs to be uniaxial. So sometimes if it is sideways, like it did over here, it may not have a particular anisotropy. But if you want to pack more information in 1 square inch, you need the moments to line up really close to each other, up and down. We can pack more, right? So for that, the media needs to have a very strong alignment ability, and that is called uniaxial anisotropy. And it's described by the constant Ku. For each material, the Ku will be different. Some materials don't have a Ku, it's 0. Okay? For some materials, Ku is very high. Okay? Now, what you need to do is for H right, it's the magnetic field required to write. That means if you have a magnetic, all your moments are sitting like this, but you want to write a 1 or a 0, you have to put in a magnetic field and you have to flip the moment, right? So that field that is required to flip is called H right over here. So you need to have a field which is stronger than the uniaxial anisotropy, or Ku, or that order of that, so that it flips and it holds the information in that particular direction. Okay? So perpendicular heads and perpendicular media can pack in more information. And in 2006, this new type, at that time it was new type of magnetic recording came into being. Okay, that was as new as 2006. Some of you may have been born at that time, right? So here is how the information is growing and why we had to literally go from putting, coolly we are putting one on top of the one left and right. Instead of going left and right, we are going top and bottom. Why we had to do that is because the information that we are generating in the world it's increasing very rapidly, twice every year at least. That's called Moore's law. And this is a diagrammatic representation of that. But I will come to this in a little bit later. I will show you a more recent graph, which goes a little bit further than 2020. So you can see. So the point is, during the last 70 years, we have increased the areal density, which means the density of information that you can pack in an area of 2 kilobytes per square inch to 2 terabits per square inch. So you can see how much we have increased 1 billion times, right? So now, what are the different challenges that come up with this increasing capacity and so much information that we need to store somewhere, right? One is thermal stability. What does it mean? thermal stability means that you want to pack a lot of information in a very small amount of space, right? So that means to increase the areal density, we need to reduce the size of these small grains over here. You have to make it smaller and smaller so you can pack more and more information, right? But if the grain size becomes too small, they become too unstable, which means to say your ones and zeros can flip all by itself just by increasing your temperature or something like that. But you don't want that. You want your photos, which you clicked in, say, Delhi in the heat of summer, to be accessible in the cold of winter as well, right? So for that, what we have to do is we have to think outside the box and come up with different solutions. One of them is called microwave-assisted magnetic recording, or heat-assisted magnetic recording, or bit pattern media, where you're literally making sure that each of those media, each of these grains, you actually pattern it down. But I'm not talking about MAMR or BPM today. I'll be talking a little bit about HAMR, and because that's where we are going. That's the most feasible solution to this issue of thermal stability, so that you will have high fidelity data. Okay. Another is how much you can write and read. How small can you make your writer, or how small can you make your reader? There's only so much you can do, right? I mean, you can't just keep making your writers writing magnets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's very difficult. So we come up with different types of recording called shingle magnetic recording and two-dimensional magnetic recording, TDMR. So these are all. So here, what you're doing is you are writing once, and then you write a little bit in. That's shingling all the magnetic tracks and figuring out very complicated way of reading it back with not just one reader, but with two readers. So that's two-dimensional magnetic recording. Or what you can do is fixed form factor, which means to say you can pack more heads and more disks together. You start off with one disk and two heads, or you keep stacking more and more, so 7 disks, 9 disks, something like that. But to do that, you still have to fly the head. So now you're talking different aerodynamics. So that's why we needed to bring in helium, where you don't have so much drag created by the air. You have all these different solutions coming up for every time there is a new challenge or new frontier of physics that's coming right in front of you. You have to get into a team and figure out a solution. So for all this, of all these solutions, there are many more, but the ones that are listed here, I'm going to be talking about HAMR. I've already gone through this before, so I won't go over this again. It's about ones and zeros and how data is written. So you may have heard about superparamagnetic limit, where there's only so much, it's the mean time that it takes. So suppose you have written some data somewhere, okay? How long does it take for it to just sit there and just automatically flip ones and zeros so that now your data is all corrupt? So you might find that some of your data, which are like 10 years ago, you take out your hard disk drive, you may not be able to retrieve it because the data is corrupt. And why is that? Because of this particular thermal energy agitation of the grain. Okay? So what's happening here is that this time that it takes is really dependent on a few factors. One factor is Ku. Remember I told you about the uniaxial anisotropy. The another one is the volume with which you're dealing. So now you're talking about nanoparticles, right? So really, really small. And you want to pack in more data means you're going smaller and smaller, right? And it's inversely proportional to the temperature. So now, if you want everything to this tau to be large, you need, and your volume to be small, you need Ku to be very large, so that whatever you write in needs to be able to be stand there very firmly. Okay, so either your uniaxial anisotropy needs to increase, or we need to start scrubbing the data to refresh thermal stability. So you have to keep writing your data again and again after every few months or something like that. Okay? So tongue-in-cheek, we are all out of BS. BS is the magnetization, saturation magnetization. So each pole has some magnetization, right? So for iron, for different kind of materials, you have different magnetic moments sitting there, right? So the point is that in nature, there's a limit. It's Slater-Pauling's limit, and it says that you can't have anything more than 2.4 Tesla. That's the largest you can get stable in nature for a field. But we see that even this is not enough to have stable data. So now we have to figure out some techniques to make sure that we have very stable data and we can pack things way together. So we need to find a way around this particular Slater-Pauling limit. Okay? So that brings us to heat-assisted magnetic recording. So you have perpendicular magnetic recording, okay, where all your bits are all perpendicular to the media. Okay, so now your drives feature a magnetic writer that supplies a field which switches the magnetization of the media in different directions. Okay, now you make this material very strongly uniaxial, which means it really wants to sit perpendicular. It's very difficult to move it, okay? Which means to say you can pack a lot more very close to each other and the data won't move, right? Because it's inherently nature has dictated that it stands very stiffly in one direction, right? How do you write on this? How do you flip this and write in ones and zeros in such a material which is so stiff it wants to point in one direction? How do you do that? That's what you do. You get the assist of heat. And we use laser to provide the heat. So hammerheads, heat-assisted magnetic, just like PMR. PMR is perpendicular magnetic recording, contains magnetic writers, but they also contain a heat source which adds some excitation that's very crucial for this ultra high density recording. Okay. Now I'm going to show you the money slide. Please, okay, at this point, is there any question? Please ask. So let's talk about how do we do this hammer? Okay, we have a material which really wants to sit only in one direction. How do we flip or how do we write data for such a material? So what you do is you temporarily heat the media. What happens when you heat a magnetic material? Have you heard about PC, the Curie temperature? That's the temperature at which the magnetic material loses its magnetization. It just stops becoming magnet. all the spins which want to sit very hard in one direction, they just go anywhere they want. Okay? So right here is the coercivity, which means to say that's the magnetic field that you require. You start heating, the coercivity goes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And at some point, it becomes zero. It doesn't remain magnetic at all. Okay? You reach that point, and then you stop the heat, you cool the media, and as it's cooling, you bam, right over here. Okay? And then once it's cooled, it's stiff as a rock. That's not going to move at all. The material is it's kind of like if you have butter and you slice through, you heat it up, and while cooling you put something in it, or you write on it. Once you cool it, the butter is solid, right? That's exactly what happens here. You write, you heat it up, your magnetic material becomes like butter, you can write on it, and then you cool it down to your normal temperature, and your information is right there. And the information will stay there forever because the material wants to be in that direction.
I'm unable to listen you clearly, ma'am. Can you please again tell me?
For many people, we discuss your style or for that we can stop.
Okay, Bhavna, did you have a question? Bhavna Biddala?
Ma'am, by using heat media, hello?
Jeremiah, I can't hear you, ma'am.
Yes, unmute. Please unmute.
Please, you take the
Participants kindly note that
partial fraction methodology. Calculate the.
Participants kindly note, please reserve your questions towards the end of the session. You can use the chat box to type your questions too.
Dr. Paul, since you're the host, can you mute everybody and have them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
On PowerPoint presentation, I am unable to discuss clearly how to calculate that. Please don't bother. I will definitely try to share you the video how to calculate.
Please, I request all the participants to please mute your microphone, please. Ma'am, I'm just sending a message to the administrator to mute all.
Thank you. Just I cannot hear myself also. Sorry about that. Okay.
So this is also one of the repeatedly asked questions in the final examination.
So the idea is that today the media that we're using is thermally stable at room temperature, but we need heat to write on it. Jeremiah had a question.
Ram, can you please mute everybody, please?
Secondly, one must be very careful not to take any error in performing log division method.
Ma'am, you can now.
Okay. I know somebody had a question in between, but they couldn't ask because we couldn't hear them. Was there a question? I think it was Jeremiah.
please continue, ma'am. Please continue.
Yeah. I'll continue. I'm sorry about that. I feel bad about that. So Hammer really allows us to keep increasing our aerial density. And this is the graph that I said that I would show. Here's your zettabytes. And here's the information that we are generating. And this is the projection up until 2025. And we're right here. So you have the information that is being stored in HDD is, you'll see, it's people say that HDD is going to go out of business, but doesn't look like. I mean, I'm telling you right now, we are struggling to keep up the demand because of cloud. You know, cloud is basically magnetic recording, pretty much. So it's quite the thing. So you'll see that there is still tape. There's still optical, little bit of NVM, which are not NAND. Okay, then there's the NAND base and there's the SSD. But still, the big chunk is a hard disk, and that's magnetic recording. So that's huge. So again, the media is made up of a very small magnetic grain, and we want to write our information, our important information from our daily lives onto this very small, precious media. Okay, so how do I say this? Okay, here. This is this shows you the bit size for 32 terabytes material. So that would be 5.6 nanometers is the grain size for this. So it's that small, and you know, there's a lot of different technologies, but I'm only talking about the heads. Okay, so you have small grains. You really do want smaller and smaller grains, which will give you lesser and lesser jitter. Now, what is jitter? If you look at large grains, you'll see that the border between the red and the blue is not really straight line, right? It's all jagged. But if you have more and more little grains, your jaggediness becomes lesser and lesser, right? So you have small grains means less jitter or jaggediness, and large grains with more jitter. If you want to increase your the amount of information that you want to pack, you need to have less jitter, means less jaggediness in your data. So you need more and more precision in your data. So then your fidelity of your data becomes proper, right? But what happens now? I was talking about the thermal fluctuation, right? I mean, something that you have recorded, say you put some data in your little hard disk drive, say 5 years ago, and now you see that you can't retrieve it. This is what has happened. Your grains have flipped by itself. So this should be completely blue, but you'll see that some of them are red, right? So the grains are in the wrong direction. And that's where, that's what's happening for low fidelity media. So you want very high fidelity media, even if you put a lot closer and closer. Okay. So this is what
how to retrieve those lost files, ma'am? Like those thermal fluctuated files. Is there any available?
You just have to keep writing data again and again.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
That's the problem. And that's a huge problem. That's why we're saying that you're looking at this time it takes to flip, say 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. You'll find a lot of it is 5 years, approximately. Warranties, you'll see, warranties 5 years.
Ma'am, is it disk fragmentation? Does it represent jitter, ma'am? Disk fragmentation in HDD
Disk fragmentation would help you with this defragmentation would help you with the you're putting in all the data together in a nice thing. But this defragmentation really more than jitter, it has to do with the speed with which you retrieve all your information. Okay. you don't want your data to be fragmented. So in your disk, your data, one part of your data, like your eyes will be on this part, but your nose will be on this part. So to retrieve the entire image, the head has to go all over the disk, right? So when you do your disk defragmentation, you're putting it all on together and trying to fit it correctly, nicely, so that it's easier to retrieve data that way, and you get your mapping all nicely done. It's got more to do with that than with the jitter, though. So how hammerheads and media function is this problem is very tricky, and I actually, after I said that I would give this talk, I realized that I should have. This is a big task, because it's a lot of different fields of physics, and some of it is very, very new. Excuse me. Okay, so I will talk about something very new called surface plasmons in a little bit. Okay. Essentially, what I want to tell you is you have a laser. What we do is we have a laser which heats the media in a one spot like this. And that spot can be as small as you can make this spot here. How small can you make your laser? That would help, okay? And you heat that media, and when it cools down, you write your data, and it stays there. However close you write your next bit of data. So it's not going to affect, okay? So that's the beauty of this high anisotropy and the hammer media, okay? So you have the different parts of hammerhead. One is called near field transducer. That's what I call the NFT. You'll hear this word a lot, as this technology becomes more and more common, you'll hear NFT quite a lot. Different types of material we use to make the NFT. So this NFT can be very, very tiny, about 50 nanometers or less, okay? Then you have the pole, then the core, that's the head. Okay? This was way back in 2009. Now it's all very different at this point, which I can't talk about very much, okay? So anyway, we use this near field transducer to get very concentrated thermal spots, okay? And how do you get this light into this NFT? We have a laser, and then you have a waveguide. I don't know if you've heard of waveguides, but waveguide is something which will guide any wave. It could be millimeter wave, it could be microwave, anything, or your optical, the cables that you put for your internet. Those are all waveguides. So it directs a light from the laser diode to the disk, and it converts it into something called surface plasmons, which travel down to the media. Yeah. Okay. So that's all that is done by NFT and the hammerhead. Okay. So at this point, is there any question? Because this is a lot of different types of phenomena which I'm talking about. Okay. Essentially, this line here gives you that one line which talks about how do we do this hammer. In hammer, heat spot applied by the NFT here reduces the anisotropy so that they can be written by a very low magnetic field. Okay? So that once it cools, it just stays there for whatever, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Okay. Until you come up with some magnetic media, which is magnetic head, which is much higher than this coercivity, which is not possible. We cannot demagnetize our hammer media, even in, we have to take it to the university to some big, with some big magnets to get our, whatever we have written wiped off from the media. It is that good, the hammer media. So hammer technology, just a quick upshot of where we are at. So where did we start off? Around 2001 or so, the first hammer recording was done at Seagate, of course, on longitudinal media. Then Seagate invents something called Lollipop. It's very funny, but it is really an advanced way of getting the laser light as a spot of heat on the media, okay, which is very, very small dimensions. You will see how difficult it is for something which is, very large wavelength, like 400, 500 nanometers. You're bringing it down, focusing it down to something which is 50 nanometers. And you can imagine that kind of very difficult. It is almost impossible to do that until somebody came up with this idea. Then we had the first hammer recording with an integrated writer. So that is all the writer is all together with no NFT, no laser, but the spots were very large, like whatever, 500 nanometers. 2010 was when we had the first hammer media on glass substrate. This is about when I joined Seagate and I started working on hammer. And I must tell you, it was so exciting. Every day we go into the lab and we're doing this stuff and even trying to write some data onto the media. And when we were able to get the laser exactly aligned and everything, it was super exciting. Just within a couple, 3 years, we did this 1,000 hours of writing in one drive, which is quite a lot. I mean, you have one hammer, one head, and you can keep writing it for 1,000 hours and nothing happened to the head. And just the other couple of years ago, we demonstrated, this was our team, which demonstrated 2 terabits per square inch using hammer in this time frame. It was exciting to the core. And then a little bit of last year, end of last year, earlier this year, hammer drives were commercially available to some customers. So it was very
is the hammer drive works faster than SSD, ma'am?
How would you call faster?
Regarding data
I would
transfer,
say probably data transfer and all is pretty much the same as any other drive, but it's you get a lot more bang for your buck, which means to say you can pack a lot more terabytes into these hammer drives rather than any SSD, anything before. So the selling point is not just the speed. Speed is there, but it's a magnetic drive, so it takes time to turn it on. It's not like your iPad, which you just press a button and it's on, right? It's a magnetic drive, so you turn it on and it takes a minute or so to turn itself on with all the fans and things like that. But so that's the usual thing. But there is nothing right now which can pack so much information into a drive. The capacity is quite large for these.
And what is the maximum amount of storage, ma'am, in this drive, hammer head? Yes,
as I said, you can record 2 terabits in 1 square inch.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah, and each of those disks could be, what's that, 2.5 inch diameter. So you can imagine what's the area of that disk, and you have a platter of say 9 or 7 disks, whatever. So you can just do a calculation of how much you can actually store.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay. Lots of details, I'm sorry, I can't give. It's just, and that's just how it is. I apologize for that, but that's how legal stuff is. So again, I put this slide here just so that you can see what it is. You have the right pole here, which is the magnet which comes in. This is your NFT. This is the one that will heat up the media, and then this one will come and write your data. And this white thing that you see around it is called the heat sink. Why do you need a heat sink? It's because your writing is done when you're starting to cool the media off, right? So you need something to suck up that heat all. Also, this temperature at which it writes is pretty high. It's quite high. So you don't want everything to heat up to that much, so you'll have some Curie temperature of some of the media could be, I don't know, 500-600 or so, or even more, right? There are lots of different media. I can't talk about the different materials, but I can tell you that those temperatures are in the above 500 C. You don't want anything inside your drive to be more than 500 C, right? For more than a fraction of a second. So that's why you have this very fast heat sink, which will suck up the heat in. Okay, and that's why I have the slide here, just to show you all the different parts of a hammerhead. Okay, and here is your NFT, how it looks like. Okay, you have the goals. This is called Lollipop for very obvious reasons. But more importantly, I wanted to show you something fun. That all these things, can you see all these different grains? These are all grains of this material here. So this is a very hi-fi image of this stuff. And so you'll have from here to here is just about it's about 50 nanometers. Okay, it's not that big deal, but the fact is that you can see all the grains in this material here. So that's some fun fact. Okay, so here is a hammer drive with a clear cover. We managed to take a picture, and you can see this laser going, blinking back and forth as it writes. So you would have the head is going up and down, and here you have the laser going. Okay. So we shipped drives to customers in a way back also, just to test the waters. The feedback was they look like normal drives. There's no changes in system, in where you store the computer racks that you put them. You don't have to change any of those. So we were so thrilled that we were able to put such an important technology and such a hi-fi technology, high fidelity technology into something which looks just the same. It's all plug and play. Okay, so that was a huge challenge to do. It was a lot of fun. So here's addressing some hammer myths. One is the reliability. Is it reliable? You have a laser which is heating up all this stuff, and you have all this material which might be going here and there. What happens? But it's no problem. Over 3 petabytes of data was written with one single head, and I can tell you that your normal head drive does not write so much data with one head. It just doesn't. So we've shown that it can be done, and this is very reliable technology. And Hammer is transparent. So, if I give you a drive and I don't tell you it's got a little laser in it, you won't even know. Except that you'll say, wow, it can pack in so much data. Okay? So that's the simplicity, that's the beauty of Hammer. It was very simple. It passed the customer a testing code using the very standard code that they use. And capacity, here you go, 2 terabits per square inch. It's a pretty high areal density. And you can easily manufacturable, all this, we are able to get all the materials. It's no problem. So we've, all these were Hammer myths floating around. Oh, I don't think it can be done, but we've proved that it can be done. You can, if you put your mind to it. So this is going to be, I'm on my last leg here. So just wanted to show the diagrams of some of the heads. Okay, so you have the head here, the assembly here, and then you have the laser over here. Okay, and you have it really this thing that looks like I don't know, some building standing on a road. That is your laser. It's attached on top of the head. Okay, and just to show you what the laser dimensions are, this is the needle, and this is the eye of the needle, and you have the laser here, which is so small. Okay, so they can make lasers really small. That's the best part about this. Okay. And here you go, some more mind-boggling pictures. Okay, so this is a penny, 1 cent, and here you have your slider sitting here. You can see how small it is. The point is that all these are, thermal interconnect. Okay, so which means to say these are all connectors, which goes to the different electronics. You can see how small the connectors are, but we are able to do all these connectors to different parts. So, one of them will connect to the heater, one of them will connect to the magnetic, coils and everything. And we're able to do that. That for me is mind-boggling, really. But another thing is this aerodynamics. The slider flies over the disk with an air gap of only 2 nanometers, and it is going less. So one of my colleagues has this sentence, and I must read it to you because it's really impressive. If you compare the head to something which is a 747, say, airplane, it is like flying the 747 at 0.1 inch above the ground and going at 70,000 miles per hour. That's impressive, right? I mean, you're flying your airplane 0.1 inch above the ground at 70,000 miles an hour and counting the blades of grass as it flies. That's the level of technology that man can do today. I think this is more exciting and a lot more teamwork than putting man on Mars. So this is, you can be sure that I'm sold on this technology, right? How much time do I have? I think I'm pretty much done here. I could actually, if there are questions here, I can take that, and I can stop here. Dr. Paul, what do you think? Because there are several more slides, but I think I can leave it to Stephanie to continue if there are questions. Any questions?
Hello, madam.
Yeah.
What is the basic difference between HDD and SSD, ma'am?
Can I tell you in one line? Immovable parts. SSD is a solid state storage, right? And it's made up of transistors, right? And and you have all these AND gates, not NAND gates, etc., which will tell you your different states of ones and zeros. HDD, on the other hand, is where you use magnetism to write your ones and zeros. The main difference, which I can see between these two, is one is static. SSD is static, and it does not have movable parts, right? And HDD has all these movable parts where you are moving the head from one place to another, on the disk. So that is that's the biggest difference, as I can see, at a very high
Thank you,
level.
ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, can surrounding field can be affected on HAMR? Means vacuum or any electrical
No.
field?
No. So what you're saying is, suppose there is a very big EMP or something that comes in, or you put the drive in a vacuum. Does it affect your data, right? It should not affect your data. Yeah, it should not affect your data unless you go and physically mangle your media. So suppose you take your pressure of the. What I'm saying is, if you could take a hammer, your real hammer, and you beat the drive and you break it, I can't say anything about the data. Okay, but other than that, the data is there. Once you write it, it just sits there. The data just sits there. I tell you, we've had tough time trying to wipe off data from a hammer disk.
Ma'am, you told in that PPT that in a nanoseconds the temperature up and heating and cooling is done, ma'am.
Yeah.
If we done this process in a cool environment, is any increasing speed of data transferring? There is any chance about that? Like supercomputers are used in a cold atmosphere now.
Right.
So
Right.
if we use any cold atmosphere surroundings, then we can increase the handle process speed or anything like that.
You should be able to, but the fact is that you must remember that you also have to heat the media. So you would have to use a little bit different technology or different type of laser to heat the media. Only because your ambient thing is super cool. But you're right. I mean, if you have a cooler atmosphere, you're cooling everything faster. That's there.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So I would like to. I had so much stuff here. It's just. I'd like to stop here and just putting it all together. So all the stuff that you were looking at is this. So to build a drive, what did we have to do to get a hammer drive out? Attach a laser diode to the head, develop some tiny mirrors and lenses so that laser light can go from the laser diode, laser, to the media, right? So we have to have a waveguide. So a waveguide is basically very tiny mirrors and lenses and everything to steer the light from the laser to the NFT. Okay? Then we had to integrate this NFT into the recording head, develop a new hammer media, modify all this firmware on the drive, and modify our manufacturing process. These are the main things. And then there are the million things. So all the stuff was done, all so that when you take the drive, you don't see any difference. So I think that is where I will end this. I will request Stephanie to go over a little bit more detail about the NFT as well as the media. That's all I had today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes.
The participants, in case if you have any questions, you can please use the chat window, or we will conclude this particular session.
I'm just looking at the chat.
Question in the chat window.
Yeah.
Do these have any role in neural link? Something written.
No. I admit I don't know what neural link is.
Okay, ma'am.
If you can tell me, then I can answer that question. But no. So,
Pranavi.
Hello, madam?
Yeah.
Can we use graphene as a storage data? Graphenes or carbon nanotubes to store data?
Graphenes?
Sorry.
Graphene technology, a lot of people are looking into it for data storage. I know that. But it's still not there yet. A lot of people are looking into it. I can tell you that much. But we're not yet there yet.
Okay.
Ma'am, Pranavi has written, do these have any role in Neuralink project by Tesla, ma'am?
I will need to read up on that, Pranavi. So I will read up and I will let you know. Okay. And about any role in Alzheimer's disease, what do you want to say? Whether do you want to unmute and ask me the question, Pranavi?
Pranavi, you can unmute and you can ask the question, please.
Because I don't understand the question. Oh, okay. Sorry, Pranavi, but I didn't understand the question as to whether this plays any role in Alzheimer's disease, in the cure of Alzheimer's disease. I would not know. All I can say is if there is a lot of data, you can definitely store it on these things. But other than that, I don't see any relation between information storage technology and Alzheimer's disease at this moment.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Can we use this so-called heat assistant technology in other parts of computer like RAM and graphic card and so on?
No. I can't detail. I can't give any more details, but yeah. Sorry, I went over. Did I go over? I apologize. I didn't mean to keep everybody. Okay. It can store huge data, so it can help Alzheimer's people to remember things. Alzheimer is a very complicated disease, and it affects in a very different manners, and not just loss of memory. You see, that's the saddest part about Alzheimer's disease. So, yeah. But yes, it can store huge data, and it can help with a lot of things. Yes.
So if there are no questions, then we can wind up the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul, for inviting me here. And
thanks a lot on behalf of the Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, on behalf of NIT Trichy, NIT Jalandhar, Seagate Technologies, and Boston Scientific. We would like to profusely thank you very much for sparing your very valuable time. Despite the time difference, I think you have made it.
I'm awake.
So
no, thank you very much for having me. I hope this was useful. I hope this was useful.
Certainly, ma'am. Yeah. I see on the chat there are some comments like they have been useful.
I'm open to questions. If Dr. Paul, if there are any questions which come to you, please direct them to me. I am happy to answer them by email.
I'm sure, ma'am, we'll do that. And we are really proud to have an Indian working in US and doing great things. So we
wish you all
the best in all your future endeavors. We look forward to
your very much
support and patronage in our future endeavors too, ma'am.
Of course. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. Stay safe, everybody. Stay safe. This is a very bad time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And dear participants, we would like